Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter, metaphysical teacher, spiritual life and business coach, published author, and the high priestess of the LightWeb, a spiritual technology that will change your life. This is the place to be to talk everything under the LightWeb, from consciousness, relationships, to money, to spiritual business, and everything in between. Hi, it's Joanna here for Into the LightWeb podcast, and I am joined by Randall Thompson, and we are on the $1 Million Lab series. Randall, come and say hi and introduce yourself to the world and what it is that you do in the world.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? I am Randall Thompson. Founded the company Dugout Mugs in my sister's backyard in 2016. Since then, I've grown it into a multi-million-dollar company, and most recently, number 719 on Inc. 5000.
Amazing.
Where are you at?
I'm in Inverness in the north of Scotland. So if you've ever heard of the Loch Ness Monster,
yes.
I'm in Loch Ness Monster country. That's where I live. So I live in Inverness, and just 10 minutes from my house, walking distance, is where the Battle of Culloden was. So if you've ever heard of the Battle of Culloden, that's where we are.
Interesting. The internet's so interesting how we can just connect from.
I know, it's amazing.
It is amazing.
We just moved into this house 5 weeks ago, but in the village that we lived before, we had 1,500 inhabitants in that village that we lived in. So we lived in a village of 1,500 inhabitants, and I had over 6,000 enrolled students in my online academy. So I had 4 times the amount of people that lived in my village. Yeah. I barely knew what my next door neighbors were called. And then I lived, and then I had like 4 times the amount of people were actually enrolled in my online academy. Like, it blows my mind of the opportunity that the internet has given me, and the fact that I can live in these more remote areas and still reach the world. It's like amazing.
It's incredible. Yeah. And we're on the forefront of it all, and people don't realize how big the internet is going to be. And they think it's big now, but we're just getting started on it. It's incredible.
I love that you think that we're just getting started on it. Yeah, it is. I remember once, maybe a couple of years ago, I heard this woman that I followed, and she was like a sort of marketing, social media guru, and she said something that really struck with me. And the thing that she said was, Facebook is the biggest nation on the planet. Mm-hmm. And I was like, she says, did you know there's 1.7 billion people in the nation of Facebook? And I never ever thought, you think of a country as a nation, you think of it, but what makes a nation, right? It's community.
Right.
And there is Facebook with 1.7 billion people on the planet have a Facebook account, which is kind of impressive when the population of the planet is 7.9 and 1.7 billion of them are on Facebook. And I was like, oh my God, it's like a total global nation. And it's so connecting.
Yeah, it is. You don't quite understand how big the world is until you start selling stuff online. And just like how she said, there's 1.7 billion people on Facebook. It's really endless. It's just, there's so many people just at your fingertips, able to connect and show them something that has value. And if you can do that, then you can create a life, like you were just saying, you can create a life where you can connect with all sorts of people and sell them something of value. It's good that I think that we're on the front side of all this. I think it's going to continue to trend where in the US, e-commerce purchasing is only like 15% of commerce. It's not going to be like that for very long. It's going to get supercharged, and a lot of people are going to start buying online. So it's interesting that we're on the front side of this.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's actually made me so excited. But you're right. You're absolutely right. Because it is, it's starting to become more and more online. Like we're moving more and more into the online spaces and things like that. And another thing that's so beautiful about it is that, I really feel like it's been really hard for people during COVID, for many people, but I really feel like, during a hard time, if there was any winners during this time, I think all of us have lost something or changed something in the way that we live. But my business nearly quadrupled during this pandemic because I was online.
Yeah, we
And
exploded
I've
too.
seen many of my clients' businesses explode, while like really blow up, like really, really, blow up during this pandemic. And again, because they were online.
Yeah.
And I've had many clients that have said to me, thank God I moved my business online, and because it would have been a very different story had they stayed in the offline world and in the offline space. And I think in a way it's shown how robust an online business can be during this time. It's been difficult for many people, but I think for a lot of online businesses, it's shown how robust that business model is.
You nailed it. Feel the exact same way. I've said that to my business partner plenty of times. Thank God we built this to be an e-com business and not a retail business. Because if we got it to the level that we got it to at a retail level, I would have just been like, forget about it. I don't I don't want to do this anymore, because it would have just crumbled. And try to learn e-com in the midst of a pandemic, I would have been discouraged and it just would have been over. So yeah, I echo those same things. Thank God we built it online.
I love that. So tell me how you started your business. How did you get started in your business?
So I grew up playing baseball. Then I got released from baseball. I signed a minor league contract with the Blue Jays. After I got released, I went and started coaching college baseball. And the hitting coach was cutting baseball bats in half in the dugout with like wooden baseball bats with a handsaw. And I saw a bunch of loose bat barrels just laying around in the dugout, and I looked at them and I had a light bulb moment that I thought you could drill out the center of it and drink from it. And like many ideas that I have, I kind of just put it in my back pocket and kind of went on with the rest of my life. And then just kind of later in life, I had this itch to be creative. I've always had an itch to be creative. I've always had an interest in business. And coaching, I kind of just was like plateaued in life, and I just felt like coaching wasn't, there was more for me. So I moved across the state for an ad agency internship. That fell apart. And then kind of just in like desperation, I took a job as driving a paint delivery van in the mornings and the afternoons. And then all the free time that I had, I said to myself, I'm just going to figure out how to bring this bat barrel mug to life. And that's what happened. It was about 2016 that I launched the company. And then 5 years later, here we are.
Wow, that's amazing. Have you always, so you were talking about that there's you kind of got this urge to be creative, but has that always been a big part of your personality, to be creative and to kind of think up? I think, I always think that business is the playground for creatives. Like that's a place where we can innovate, create, come up with new ideas, things that the world has never seen before, stuff like that. Is that your experience of that as well?
Yeah, that's the most enjoyable part of business for me, is having a concept in my mind, taking that concept from my mind to a physical thing, from a physical thing, and then that first sale, being able to see that that the market wants it. That's my favorite cycle, so to speak, of the business side. There's obviously like sales, promotions, operations. There's all sorts of different tentacles to business. I love product innovation. I love creative concepts. I've always loved it. Never really knew what it meant when I was a kid, but I was always dreaming up stuff and always discussing stuff with my parents and my friends and my buddies in the dugout. And I'm glad that I realized that I could apply that and actually monetize it, because it's something that I found a ton of joy in, a ton of purpose, and a lot of passion in it.
I love that. I love that. So growing your business, how did it all start? Like, how did the process of starting growing your business? Because you came up with it, you've got this idea, you've got this concept. What was the next steps that you took in your journey?
It was 2016. And what I noticed that was going on is, as I was scrolling through like my Facebook feed, I noticed that there were like very um, niche t-shirts being sold to people. So like chess players and engineers and like these very niche things getting shown on the people's Facebook feeds of that typically wouldn't be sold something. And I looked into it, and it was this print on demand style of stuff where people would create a design. Facebook obviously has a bunch of information on you on what your interests are, and marketers had access to that information. So they could see that in your job title, you're an engineer. So they would create a t-shirt and say, something witty that an engineer would want to buy. So I was like, wow, what an interesting concept of how to sell to these people that live within the niches. And I got into looking into who was selling these t-shirts in a big way. And that's how I came across my business partner. And I saw that he was selling a ton of t-shirts online within the niches. And I said, hey, I want to sell these mugs in a big way. At this point, I had like $50,000 or $60,000 in sales in the first 5 or 6 months of the business. I was like, I want to sell these in a big way. I don't know anything about Facebook marketing, but I'm learning. Can I pick your mind on how you're doing this? So we ended up linking up, and then we ended up working together for the past 5 years. So it's online sales. Facebook sales is how it all started.
Amazing, amazing. I love that. And one of the things that you said to my team that was really interesting when we were booking you in was that you have used kind of your gut feeling and your intuition to hire people. Talk us through how that, how you've relied on that in as a thing going through, because I find, I really believe that mindset, like having the positive mindset and having the intuition really being sort of soul led or intuition guided, is a winning combination. Is this something that you agree with, or where do you stand on this?
Yeah. For me, I would say like decision making is maybe 70 or 80% intuition. And 100% of what you do in life is a practice of a mindset. Some of us, I think, are born a little more of an advantage than others. Some are born with better intuition. Some are born with a better mindset. But it doesn't. But those are two things that I feel like can be honed with time, and those are two things that you can get better with practice. But yeah, I think I was born with one a pretty I was blessed with a good intuition. I think I use my my gut feelings to make a lot of decisions, especially in the hiring side of things. Almost
Mm,
my first just overall feeling of sitting down with a person and having a conversation with them, within the first minute or two, I can kind of make up my mind of whether I feel like it's going to be a good fit or not. Um,
mm,
and the thing is that like, just like bad products, the market will tell you that it's a bad product. We've built a team at Dugout Mugs that very quickly, if it's not a good fit for a hire, the team that we have currently running will tell us that it's not a good hire. So the system that we have running and the people that we have running the company now, they almost just spit them out and just say, hey, this wasn't a good idea. There's some sort of character flaw, or there's some sort of something, there's just something wrong. And it never has to do with,
that's not a fit. Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't have to do with like skill set. It just has to do with overall just attitude and working well with others, and just maybe some sort of underlying issue with a personality. But either way, rabbit hole or wormhole a little bit, but yes, intuition is incredibly important. Mindset is probably the most important thing, and both can be honed with time. but I use it all. I use both of those all the time.
I love that. I love that. You use your intuition. Is intuition, do you feel like, because you're saying that you felt like you were really blessed with a really strong intuition, and I was born incredibly intuitive. So my intuition was very much like always been my superpower. But did you feel also as well like intuition lent itself well to your sports background as well? Because I feel sometimes in sports, it can be quite an intuitive process as well within the sort of sports thing of there's a feeling, if you know what I mean.
Mhm. Yeah, there not only with like your teammates, but also the gameplay that's going on in front of you. You can I I feel as if that I had a pretty good feel for momentum shifts. And
Mhm.
a lot of that, a lot of baseball is controlling the momentum of things, and
Mm.
and from a coaching side of things, being able to recognize that the momentum is shifting from one side to the other, and then how do you slow that down? Ultimately, if you can slow that down, then I think you can add more wins to your win column. Um, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, because some people, they just kind of look at it and they just kind of see the whole picture, but maybe I feel something. I don't know. I just know that the history of things, I've been able to kind of identify the good and kind of like the weirdness of people, and then also just the gameplay of things, the shift of things happening. Uh, it's a feeling that I don't know how to necessarily describe.
You're describing a psychic gift called clairsentience, so you feel it. So if it was like a knowing, it became a knowing inside you, it would be called claircognizance. But what you're describing is called clairsentience. What clairsentient people can do is that they can process multiple pieces of information all at once and create, like, it's called in what I teach is, it's called like the path of least resistance. So you are able to compute all these different variable factors, and then you feel what is going to be the path of least resistance. And if you take that path, it works out for you. When you don't take that path, you're like, ah, damn it. Like it's like you've stubbed your toe and you're like, oh, so
Uh,
annoying.
uh, I'm a nut about input output. Uh, I love small amounts of input that yield high amounts of output, and I hate things that waste time and create friction. Uh, I'll avoid them at all costs. So that sounds like a good representation of me. So that you're probably on to something there.
Beautiful. So, in amongst all this, the mindset, how has that featured in your business, and bringing in mindset? Is that an important thing? Is that something that you work on with your team, or is that something that you worked on personally? How does mindset feature in your business?
So I think it starts in my childhood. My dad, I don't want to say like super negative, but we'll say he's uh, a realist, so to speak, and that could be perceived as a pessimist. Um,
Mm.
and I think I'm a result of overcorrection of that. One of my like all-time favorite ways of like, I don't even know what you would call it, but if you had two sons, right? And my dad's not an alcoholic, but like just in the example,
Mm.
if you had two sons raised by an alcoholic dad, and one becomes an alcoholic and another becomes a successful pastor of some sort, and you ask them, well, why are you the way that you are? They both are going to answer the same way and say, are you kidding me? Look at my dad. And I think that's like there's such an important lesson in that, and that I've been fortunate that I kind of was raised by this realistic, sometimes pessimistic dad, that like, this is the way that life works, this is the way that money works, that this is the way that everything works. And for me, I said, I mean, does it? And I always had kind of like this positive, everything's going to go right. If it can go right, it will. Where my dad's like, if it can go wrong, it will. Uh, it's just an overcorrection of things, and we can constantly look at the people that are trying to influence us, and we can either absorb it, or we can just kind of question it and go in the opposite
Use it as
direction
the
of it.
contrast, like the
Right.
contrast. Like, I love that. And that I've never heard that example before, but I often say, one person went through a really big trauma and they say to people, I'm a victim. And then another person went through almost an identical trauma and they say, I'm a survivor. And I always say to people, what is the difference between those two people? Why is one a victim and one is a survivor? And it's always mindset. It's always how they have approached the situation, what they've taken with the raw materials of that situation, the difficulty, the hardship, the trauma, the thing, and how they have allowed it. So one person, so in the victim has allowed the trauma to define them. And the person who is the survivor, who is choosing not to let that moment in time survive, be their definition. It is allowed to be a moment in time and not a definition. And I love your example because I think, yes, we see that a lot, even in families. We can see that a lot in families, that one child is like the super achiever, and then this other child like literally cannot keep down a job. And this is something that, many people, I think everybody knows someone that they can maybe even relate the story to. So I love that example. And it is really, what are we going to do with the raw materials that comes in? And I love that your mindset, you kind of use your father's influence as the contrast. How can I be the contrast to this? So as he thought, well, if something can go wrong, it can go wrong. And you're like, well, if something can go right, it can go right.
For sure.
So that has obviously stood you in good stead, because I really truly believe that it's very hard to bring in what we love or want or require when we're focused on the opposite of that. When we're focused on the negative, it's very hard to create a positive result, being focused on the negative. So with your mindset of being focused on the positive, is this something that you try and instill in the culture of your business or in your employees, or is this something that you look for employees who naturally tend to think this way?
So I think the best thing that I can do is just be consistently who I am. And I think that will kind of trickle down to everybody. So I think it starts with action, and me consistently taking action and within this realm of positive mindset. Something that managers meetings every Monday, something that I really just drill home is, let's always just focus on the solution. There's always a solution. We don't have to even look at the problem. Let's just immediately go to the solution. Another thing that I drive home is, it's your team. Let's expect greatness. Let's just, in everything that we do, let's do everything that we can to make our teams great. Take pride in making your team great. And then another thing that we're doing right now, move your body often, drink water, get sunlight. All these things are important to the overall just development of your mindset. You're gonna feel better if you do those things. If you feel better, it's gonna trickle down to the rest of your team as well. So I don't wake up and put my positive mindset hat on. And when I started this company, I was probably in the worst mindset of my life. And I almost, sometimes when you break a bone, bones can grow offset back together. And then you have to break that bone in order to get it to fuse back correctly. I was always kind of positive, and then I had a rough year or so, and then I was like, I had to completely break that bone to the point of like, I had something on my mirror every morning when I woke up that I recited, and I had to kind of trick myself that to get myself back on track of things. So I think what I'm ultimately a result of now is there's been 5 or 6 years of just feeding myself. I'm a habit machine now of just feeding myself just positive stuff constantly. Not to a point of like, you can be, you can just give yourself so much positive feedback that you're blind to actually what's going on. So I'm still aware enough, I hope, but yeah, I don't.
What I say is I like to be aware enough, but I don't want to buy what society is always selling.
Right,
Like you can go and browse a shop, but you don't have to go in there and buy what they're selling. And that's how I see it. Like,
for sure.
yes, I can be aware of world events and news and things, but I don't have to go in there and buy what they're selling, like, and put it in my home, put it in my house. I
For
don't
sure.
need that. I can be, I can be aware. Yes, I don't like what's going on there. Okay, good. Thank you for letting me know that that's happening.
Yeah.
But here's what I want to contribute to the world. And I
Mhm.
don't want to contribute the words, oh my goodness, isn't that awful? Isn't that horrible? Isn't that terrible? Because I don't actually think that adds anything to the value of the collective consciousness. How can we make things better? Now, there's a cool question that adds value to the collective consciousness.
Right. Agreed. Completely agree. Yeah, it's
I love it.
yeah, I like the analogy of going and window shopping, but not necessarily buying. And
You
that's a
don't need to
choice.
take
That's a
that stuff
choice.
home. Yeah, absolutely. You do not need to take that stuff home.
No.
And and I don't think it really benefits anyone. Like one of the things, and I, when I used to subscribe, like about 15 years ago, I used to subscribe to news and all the things, and I felt ill and inundated and bombarded, and I didn't like who I was when I thought about other humans. Like I didn't like sitting watching the news and then sitting there thinking, God, they are awful people. Like I didn't like being that woman. I didn't like being that person. And so for me to unplug from that, be aware, so I'm not ignorant, but to be aware, but then to see, what can I do as an individual to improve the whole? What can I do? What can I do that actually is going to help other people? And what that's given me, because I don't have all my energy going there, it's given me the energy to create in these last 6 years, since 2015 when I started my business, to pour so much amazingness into my communities, the people in my world, the people who come to my world, and so many lives have been changed because of it. But I don't think I would have had the energy to do all of that had I plugged into the negativity on a consistent basis. Because I think I wouldn't have had the strength to believe in the goodness of humanity. And I think a lot of people find themselves in that place.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You you can drink the Kool-Aid, but it's going to give you cavities later. And
I love
yeah,
that. I love that.
yeah, I get it.
Awesome. So what are your plans for taking your company forward? Because right now we're in the middle of a pandemic. So we were saying just earlier that thank goodness that we both have online businesses and that you started this e-commerce business that was online. Um, and it certainly showed us how robust our businesses are. What is your plans going forward? What is your taking over the world moment?
Well, we've been blessed that our supply chains haven't broken down. I'm starting to notice people are having production issues or having they're having a hard time finding people to come and work for them.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Material shortages. I guess we can't shut the world down for 9 months and not expect there to be some sort of ripple effect to that. So we've been fortunate, and knock on wood, that the production side of things has been good. We continue to get blessed with just great people that are part of our organization. Um, and I mean, really, the idea is try to get as many people to know about Dugout Mugs as possible at at the lowest amount of input possible and the lowest amount of money possible. And hopefully, that balloons out, and more and more people know about Dugout Mugs. It's going to be mostly e-commerce. We were mostly e-commerce before the pandemic. About 95% of our business was made up from online shopping. So yeah, we're just going to continue to try to get as many people to know about Dugout Mugs as possible, and at the lowest cost possible.
I love it. Tell us a little bit about some of the mugs that you guys make. Do you do like because obviously, like, I'm in the UK, so what I know about baseball could probably fit on the back of a postage stamp. So, but I know there's a lot of people in my communities from Europe and things like that, and they probably have the same amount of knowledge as me when it comes to baseball. In fact, we don't even call it baseball; we call it rounders here in the UK. So it's like, nice. It's not even called baseball. So tell us a little bit about, like, obviously people have teams, right, that they follow, and they get really, really into their teams, and they get really into all of that.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about how, tell us a little bit about, like, do you get special bats that you do special things on, or is it team orientated? How does it all work?
A majority of our business is we sell MLB licensed stuff. So like in the US, there's 30 teams at the major league level. And like the New York Yankees, the Los Angeles Dodgers, all these kind of bigger cities in the US have these teams that everybody loves. I would think in like the UK, like soccer is probably like your guys' biggest sport, but within larger cities, there's these soccer teams. Same thing in the US. They all have logos that represent that particular team. And that's the biggest portion of our business. Is somebody gets a bat barrel mug with their favorite Major League Baseball team's logo on it. We also customize them. So like we can take a photo of a father and son that were at a baseball game. We can pixelize it in a way, and then we can just engrave it onto the mugs. And that's a big seller for us as well, because what we've realized is that a lot of people buy these for gifts, not necessarily, they're not buying them for themselves, to just drink out of. It's very much a gifted item.
I love that. And I think, I think I've spoken to a couple of other people who have actually mentioned baseball on the podcast, and it just seems to be a very family thing in America. It seems to be a very, you go there with your kids, or it's like, or it's a legacy thing where like it's the whole family and stuff like that. So you can see how that would bring in, and I'm actually sitting here, my brain is going, because I actually have a client who is in real estate, but she sells a lot of properties to a particular baseball team in St. Louis. And so I was just sitting here thinking, I wonder if she needs good gifts to give.
She definitely does.
That's so funny. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. Tell people, where can they find you on the internet? Like, where can they find you? What's the best places to find you? And what we're going to do for the episode is put all the links below, but just tell them where you love to hang on the internet. So that if somebody wanted to follow you or follow your company, how can they do that?
Yeah, if you check out Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, it's Dugout Mugs, dugoutmugs.com. And for me, just LinkedIn. Randall Thompson is, I'm just on LinkedIn. You can take a look.
Perfect.
Try to find me there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you helping us get the word out.